Welcome to the Indie Author Show. It's Sue Miller and I'm your host of the Indie Author Show. My guest, Michala, Leyland, will be joining us shortly. I can't believe it's October, but here we are, and it's time to bring out the woolly jumpers and turn on the lights a lot earlier. But, the sunshine is still here, so we're having a good time. I'm looking forward to my show today with Michala. You're, where are you? Are you Southport?
I'm Southport way now, yeah.
Yeah, so bit of a trek to come down to Wrexham, so thank you for that. If these roadworks would just stop, our lives would be much easier. But anyways, let's talk about your book, Bounce Back from Burnout. Now, you've just brought me a copy, so thank you very much for that, and signed it nicely, and I'm looking forward to reading this. So tell me a little bit about it, and did it come about because you suffered your own burnout? Is that why you wrote the book?
Yeah, if we have to start at the beginning really with my story, which is that I was a young teacher, newly qualified teacher. Teaching's all I'd ever wanted to do from the age of 5. I'd looked at my auntie who had this beautiful little house in St Helens, 2 miniature schnauzers and the most amazing fashion sense. And she was a teacher, and I just looked at her and thought, I want that. She had a Marks and Spencer's sofa. In my world when I was little, that was a big deal. Yeah. So I just, that was me, wanted to be a teacher. And very much what I'm all about is helping people to achieve their potential and for people to see their potential. So that really was the starting point of me going into teaching. And when I got into teaching, I very quickly realised that, what happened was actually, I realised that I never felt good enough. I had what I now recognise as a hyperachiever saboteur that wouldn't let me recognise how good I was. And consequently, even when in my second year of teaching, I was given the opportunity to become second in department, even though there were senior people there who could have done the job, even though they were more experienced, older, I was given the opportunity to do it. And because I didn't know how to say no, and because I wanted to please, I said yes. But ultimately, it was, looking back, it was premature really because of where I was mentally. But the biggest problem in my burnout was that I did not articulate to anybody how I was feeling. If you'd have met me, you would have thought I was this, little absolute ball of energy, can-do attitude, get stuck in. And I was. But it was absolutely killing me because I was working till 1 o'clock in the morning. I was getting up at 5:30 and starting again, and nothing was ever good enough. And as I felt worse and worse, and that mean little cow voice that I talk about, which is that inner critic voice, really started to kick in, and the imposter syndrome really started to kick in. Who on earth are you to be second in department while this other person was on maternity leave? It just literally had me on my knees because I just worked and worked and worked to overcompensate really for the fact that I didn't feel good enough.
Did you have kids then?
No, I didn't have children, so I had nothing to stop me either. I literally would work every hour God sends, and I started to disconnect from my family, from my friends, because I could not articulate this. I couldn't tell people I felt like this. I felt like a failure. I felt like there was something wrong with me to feel like this. And then again, that came out in symptoms. So I started to have panic attacks in the toilets. I was losing a lot of weight very quickly. And you can see I can't lose a lot of weight without that being a problem. And so it really, really got to a crunch point. Now, what I did was initially I decided to move schools because I was working in an inner-city school and there was a lot of vulnerable kids with acute problems and lots of social issues. And I thought maybe if I went to a middle-class school, this will all improve. But my problems followed me because I was the problem ultimately. Now, that's not to say that in the teaching profession, again, if you are prone to this, it is an environment where burnout is rife because the system's set up for it.
Was this primary school or high school?
This was secondary school, yeah. Secondary, and I did French and English, very heavy marking. I was super conscientious, so every book got marked every night. There was never anything, but it was just too much.
Did you have a good relationship with the kids?
Brilliant relationship with the kids, brilliant relationship with my head of department, absolutely adore her, still send Christmas cards, 25 years on. So there was all the conditions were fine. It was me not articulating any sign of weakness, any sign of not lack of confidence in myself. I literally hid it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, it's a really important message on World Mental Health Day to say the most important thing you can do is connect and communicate with somebody who has earned the trust of your vulnerability. So that might be a family member, it might be a friend, it might just be a mental health professional, you know, in the first instance, if you haven't got those other things. I'm lucky, I'm blessed with the love of my life, who I've had there since I was 18, and my mum, who, you know, and family who are amazing. And when I actually articulated it, because I went into the middle class school, and again, they started talking about promotion. I had lots of different extra responsibilities immediately placed on me because they knew that I could do the job. And the job got done, Sue. I never had a day off work. But I was going home in the car sobbing every night. It was horrific. You know, I was in the toilets having panic attacks and starting to avoid people. And I'd got adrenal fatigue and reactive depression, and I didn't even know it. I just saw myself as a complete failure in it, and somebody who was really weak, which was a nonsense, you know. But that's because I'd started listening to that mean little cow voice, that inner critic, and let it rule the show. So the reason I say burnout's an opportunity is because I literally just cracked one day, one weekend, and admitted to my husband, well, he wasn't my husband at the time, he was my partner at the time, but admitted how I was feeling, what I'd been doing, you know, how this had been affecting me. Now, obviously, he wasn't stupid. He'd been living with me.
Well, I was going to ask you, did he notice? Like, or this wasn't a complete surprise to him?
No, because I'd been acting out in so many ways, but I just pushed him so far away in terms of not communicating and connecting with him and just being snappy and overworking. You know, he couldn't talk to me at night because I was working. So just bring me a cup of tea and leave me alone was the message I was sending him all the time. At weekends, I remember really vividly, I'd met friends from university and we went for a weekend away, and everyone just seemed so happy and their lives all sorted and all this. And on the surface of it, mine looked marvellous. You know, we'd just bought a beautiful little house, 2 up, 2 down in Southport, gorgeous Victorian semi-detached house, done it up. You know, we'd just bought cats, all these lovely things, you know, everything looked lovely. But inside I was just literally burning myself into the ground. And I just remember on that weekend, I looked at I literally was looking at my watch all the time. I've got to get back. Because I needed to carry on doing the work. Because if I wasn't doing the work, I wasn't good enough. That was the story I was playing out in my head. So the reason I say it's an opportunity is because when I did have that weekend where I cracked and told my husband.
Was it after that weekend?
No, it wasn't. It was a bit later than that. And do you know, I still to this day, I think I was in that much of a fog. I can't even remember what the moment was.
Yeah.
I literally it just happened. I just told him, and the relief, Sue. That in itself, just making that connection with the person that I love, telling them how bad I felt, telling them how awful the burnout felt and what it was doing to me, lifted the weight off my shoulders. So I think that's a really important message to put out there. When you're feeling like this, please talk to somebody. Do not hold it in. The feeling of being trapped in the circumstance is the thing that's burning you out even further. And understanding it and understanding what the symptoms are, because my panic attacks, I just thought I was going crazy. But no, it wasn't. It was just symptoms of the anxiety building up and having to go somewhere.
I think some people listening might say, but who do I talk to? Because they don't always have a supportive partner or they're afraid that their partner won't be supportive.
So again, this is where I say find a mental health professional, or again, depending on where you are in your burnout journey. I mean, this is why now I'll just give you a little bit of background. The opportunity was that I then went on to find I actually got professional help. I also then went on to look at other opportunities to teach, because that's the other thing. In my head, I'd made this thing that I was a failure if I left teaching, as in the teaching in school. Nonsense. There are a million ways to teach. I'm teaching now.
Yes. Yeah.
But in my head, I'd created a narrative that meant I had to stay in the classroom. And I wasn't equipped at that point to be a good classroom teacher, because I hadn't got these patterns under control of behaviour of overworking when I didn't feel good enough.
Right. How long were you in teaching before you came to that realization?
It was 4 years,
4
and then I
years.
had a year as supply whilst I created the exit plan and created the opportunity to get into the charity sector, which is where I spent 12 years.
Okay.
Absolutely loved it. Again, then had a big change within the charity that I was managing, and we had to move into a bigger organisation. And I realised this is where the shoulds come in. So you've heard me talk about the shoulds. Sod the shoulds. The shoulds. So I'd got into senior management, I'd gone into these roles, and then you obviously get promoted and you go through all these things to get the promotions, to get the additional finances. Because again, money is an indicator of our success, isn't it? Mm. I'd got to the point where I was managing my own charity, and then we had to merge with a bigger organisation. And I suddenly found myself in a bigger organisation, not able to do the stuff that lights me up.
Right.
Because the promotion had given me work that wasn't really the stuff that I'm at my best at. Mm-hmm. It wasn't giving me allowing me to use the skill set and the leadership skills in the way that I can perform at my best. And so consequently, again, this is where, again, it was another opportunity because I could feel myself sliding down that road again. And I just thought, no, I'm nearly 40, or was it just about 40? This has to be it. And I'd started doing a lot of personal development work. I'd actually gone on an amazing healing weekend with some incredible Canadians, Dwayne and Catherine O'Kane, who had taught me about the power of connection. And again, that's why it's really important to talk to somebody else. So, that's one of the reasons why I set up my coaching practice, because when someone's gone through a burnout, or when you're just simply overwhelmed, and I think this happens to a lot of us, when you get overwhelmed, it starts to get foggy. You start to listen to that voice in your head that is telling you that you're not good enough, and that you can't do it, and you don't deserve this, that, and the other. All those things start to play out louder, and you're not managing it. And so for me, coaching clients, particularly high achieving females who are in roles where they feel, they've got there because they are blooming amazing, but then it might be a life event. They've suddenly got to care for an elderly adult on top, an elderly parent on top of all their existing responsibilities. Yeah. They've got to maybe they have a life change with their children, maybe they have something that happens to them physically or on a health level. And overwhelm and burnout can happen as a reaction to something like that. And then consequently, they start to doubt themselves in all the other areas. Mm-hmm. Because, again, it's just that they're in that area of vulnerability. And so for me, coaching those clients out of that situation, giving them tools and strategies, which is what I use now, to keep my energy levels maintained, to be consistent, to allow myself to not listen to that mean little cow voice in the way that I used to. I do listen because there's often a grain of truth, but I will not let it rule my days anymore. And that, funnily enough, when I put this book out, that was a moment of imposter syndrome. I lay on my bed, I remember wailing for about 10 minutes. It doesn't last long anymore, you see. It used to last for months and months and months. It doesn't last long now. Wailing and wailing. Oh my goodness, who am I? Who am I, Sue? To put out a book about burnout. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a doctor. The reason I wrote this book, Bounce Back from Burnout, is because when I was in burnout, I started to try and look at things around burnout once I'd understood what it was that I was going through. It was all such heavy reading. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's the last thing I could do was to actually absorb any of that information in my head. I already had enough going on. So my book is like me sitting with you at your kitchen table.
It's not a textbook.
No, it's literally a working document for you. It tells a little bit of my story, but the story is guiding you through your own recovery and your own opportunity to take burnout. Because what burnout tells us is something isn't going on right within maybe the way that you're living your life, or how you are processing that subconscious. You're processing that mean little cow voice, and processing the information that you've got in your subconscious brain. So it's a really important, for me, it's a really important document for anybody wanting to start looking at how they are in their burnout.
I'm just looking through it, and there's, places where you ask questions, you can get people to fill things in.
Yes.
And that's so good, because then it makes it real. It makes it about them. So, you give some examples and so on, which is good. But, and even now that you're coaching, that's still teaching, isn't it?
Definitely. And again, I'm just about to launch a VIP Better program for women called 90 Days to Thrive, from overwhelmed to outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, we're going to co-create this program, because again, when I'm working with people, I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't want to tell you that you've got a nighttime routine that doesn't work for you and you need to go to bed at this time, or that you need to eat these foods, or that you need to, do, I don't know.
Shut your phone off.
Yeah, shut your phone off, whatever,
Yeah.
all the little things that we can do to help our mental well-being. I don't want to tell you to do that, because guess what will happen, Sue?
You'll do it. You'll do it because you're being stubborn, or
you won't do it.
Yeah.
You won't do it because it's not your priority.
Yeah.
It's not, you haven't taken ownership of it. And that's what, again, I've got a bit of a bugbear about the way coaching is perceived out in the online, particularly in the online space.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people telling people, and to be fair, I'm guilty of it, in the sense that when I'm doing lives or I'm doing things on my Facebook page, for Wood for the Trees coaching, that I am, telling, because obviously I'm giving information and talking about techniques that are used. But I always say at the end of it, and I hashtag every single thing, sod the shoulds.
Mm-hmm.
So if my should is not your should, don't do it.
Yeah.
And that's why working one-to-one is so important, because when I work with clients, we get to the bottom of what's going to work for them, what they want, how they're going to do it. Yes, I bring tools. Yes, I bring techniques. But what I do is I offer those at points when that person is identifying and clarifying that's what they need in the process. I'm not just shoving it at them and saying, right, you got to do this, because it won't work.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's about taking ownership. Well, I'm going to just go to a track, and then we'll come back and we'll get you to go in depth a bit more of the book. But giving us your background and knowing what you went through. And that's why I was trying to get somewhat of a timeline. So you were like 4 years teaching, then another year supply teaching.
Yeah, and then 12 years in the charity sector.
And then how long have you been?
And then I've been doing this is my 4th year now.
I was going to say it's about 4 years, isn't it? Yeah, I think I've known you for 4 years. I'm sure lots of women and men, and as you were saying before, a lot of women will admit it more than men do. And when I did ask you to come on the show, did you realize that this was Mental Health Day when you suggested that? Yeah. No, what a perfect date to have you on as a guest. I really need to pay more attention to those things. But you were saying off air, which I think we should mention, is there's a lot of male suicides, and that could potentially be down to the fact that they don't admit it, or they have nobody to talk to, it seen as a sign of weakness, blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Again, I market to women, but I do work with men. And I do think it's a big issue for men, that whole, you've got to man up and you can't show your emotions, and boys don't cry, and all those sorts of things that we teach children from very, very young. I think the tide's turning. I think that hopefully we are realising that the more that we can manage our emotions effectively, that's all it is. It's no big deal. It's made out to be this great, terrible thing that, you'd have a mental health issue. No, it's simply managing your emotions and your energy and the way that your mind is working. So for me, I would say, I think the brain's got on 3 settings. This is me and my simplistic way of saying it. We've got the default thinking, which is where we go into the subconscious, and it is filled with all of our experiences and reference points, and it's the place where we are basically if it was the caveman days, it's where we would have been looking for danger, having all the danger signs, they would have been kept there, and we would be keeping ourselves safe from saber-toothed tigers. The amygdala is the part of the brain that sends the signal to the subconscious that something's wrong, and that's what creates then the mean little cow voice that I talk about, that inner critic. It also sends out the signs that there's danger. So again, when we stretch ourselves, which is a good thing to do, to stretch ourselves within our businesses or within our lives, doing things at the weekends with our families, etc., it will send signals. And what we tend to not do is manage that very effectively, and consequently then we go in a downward defaulting spiral. Oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do this. What's wrong with me? Why can't I? You know, you go into that. There's a supportive setting. Lots of people live in a supportive setting. Everything's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I think the fine is the worst F word.
Yeah.
Because it keeps us stuck. There's not, you don't go anywhere with it, do you? You just stay fine.
Yeah.
And it keeps us stuck. It stops us from growing. It stops us from developing ourselves. Whereas solution-focused thinking, which is what I talk about a lot, is helping us get into our conscious brain. It's getting to our conscious mind, our sage brain. There's an amazing book called Positive Intelligence. If you look that up, it's really, really good. In my book, I reference it. So again, you can have a look there. And there is, if you go on my website at www.woodforthetreescoaching.co.uk, in the me time section in there are development books, and it's in there. It's a really, really fantastic book. And that sage part of our brain, that's where we are creative, we're empathetic, all those things. And so we can tap into that more readily and get perspective. Because again, what happens with that mean little cow voice is that it stops us having perspective. It just dramatizes everything and gets us in survival mode when we don't really need to be. There isn't something physically dangerous, unless there is, of course. But the majority of times, if you want to go and do a presentation in front of the CEO and the board of directors, you're not actually physically in danger, but your brain is sending all the signals that you're about to be eaten. Yeah.
And I think the issue with women is that we do have all these dreams, these goals, these hopes, and we think, oh yeah, we can do this. And then we get into it. We get in the middle. It's like you seeing that M&S sofa, and that was like set a goal and a dream for you. And so we have, I can do this. We can do this. And then you start doing it, and then you get in the middle of it, and you think, what am I doing? I can't do this. So it's the mean little cow voice, like you say. It's there all the time.
And you see, what she's not doing, what that mean little cow voice isn't doing, and I call it the mean little cow voice because she was mean to me. Yeah. She was really mean when I was in my burnout. What it's doing is it's basically just creating all the what ifs that are negative and not helping you to find the what ifs that are positive. And also what it's doing is it's chunking up, which is like looking at it from this huge big picture. Of course, if I'm sat here and I've got this huge goal over here and I look at that, it's overwhelming. But if I decide, what am I going to do today to take a step, it's not overwhelming. That's a live stream, or that's reaching out to a company, or that's connecting with somebody to say, actually, do you know what? I think I could really help you. And, get attracting a client to me that I know that I'm going to be able to support. It's not me setting up a, retreat centre in 20 years' time where young people and women come to, increase their confidence, increase their emotional resilience. It's today. And if we stay with today, we can manage that so much more effectively.
So tell us a little bit then about in your book, you talk about the mean little cow.
So I'll read out a little bit, if you don't mind, from page 9, which is sort of earlier on in the book. And the chapters are really short. Again, when you're in burnout, you do not want long, rambling chapters. I'm talking to you because you're in the middle of this overwhelm and I'm helping you to get out of it. So this is where we start. We are intelligent, vibrant, passionate women. We wouldn't allow someone else to speak to us in this way, so why do we do it to ourselves? The emotional or chimp part of the brain, as explained by Dr. Steve Peters in The Chimp Paradox, is there to help protect us in a survival situation. Unfortunately, if we focus too long on this part of our brain, it will send us messages that make us doubt ourselves, our abilities, the circumstances we are in. That is your mean little cow voice. In burnout, she's in overdrive. It's important to hear the signals our mean little cow is giving us, but it is more important to act on what she's trying to tell us rather than linger in it. In Chapter 7, we'll look at ways to undo this damage. She's keeping you stuck. She's stopping you from enjoying what you have now in your life. She's making you fear success, and she's terrified of failure. She's stopping you from achieving success in a way that lights you up and keeps you foggy and misty on how you can bring more of it into your life. She's keeping you in burnout. By listening to that mean little cow voice for too long, you are not taking advantage of the other side of your brain that is empathetic, imaginative, creative, resourceful, and investigative. She's trapping you in her negativity, and it's time to train her to be quiet. You'd think I'd be saying let's kill her off, but sadly she does serve a purpose. As humans, we need to be able to identify danger and risky situations. But when we let that voice dominate, we simply reduce our experiences to risk-averse, doom-laden nonsense. And we don't want that, do we?
Oh, Michala, that is, wow. That is, I hope I'm not the only one who that resonates with. Boy, you know, it is. She's making you fear success, and she's terrified of failure. She keeps you foggy and misty on how you can bring more of it into your life. She's keeping you in burnout. So, you know, okay. Let's not kill her off, but let's get rid of her.
Yeah. And it's so possible.
Send her on holiday.
Exactly. I mean, I have a membership club for women, and it's called the Solution Focused Sisterhood. And in there, that's what we do on a daily basis. You know, when that starts and she comes in, we nip her in the bud.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we nip that voice in the bud. And it might be a he for some people. You know, I'm not being sexist here. The mean little cowboys can be a man as well, or a gender neutral, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just that voice in your head as you see it. And the burnout amplifies that sound. I mean, I really can't tell you how loud it was in my head. You know, when I'm stood in front of a head teacher who's telling me he's absolutely amazed that a 2-year NQT has just produced a 100-page document on, because I was the health and safety rep on top of being second in department in the English department.
Of course.
That he was amazed by the quality and the thoroughness of what I'd done. I didn't hear that. All I heard was the fact that we didn't have the budgets, and I just kept thinking, I've failed, you know, because I'm not going to get all of these things that need to happen in the school changed. I think I'd given him like a £4 million overhaul of the school in his document. The likelihood of him being able to do all of it was just, you know, not real. But again, I just couldn't hear the good bits. I just focused on that because I was in burnout, and I really listened to that mean little cowboys just saying, yeah.
And you're also exhausted, like physically exhausted, right? Because you're not getting enough sleep, so therefore you can't think about things rationally either. So it does become a downward cycle, doesn't it, with all these things?
Absolutely. And I think, again, you know, in the workplace, there is a lot of women who go back to work and are, you know, sleep deprived from having children, etc.
Right. Yeah.
And again, they start really beating themselves up about their performance levels when actually they're managing amazingly well, considering how little sleep they are working on. Mm-hmm. And again, funnily enough, I've done a blog, which I haven't posted yet, but I intend to, which is around how that mental load, you know, carrying the mental load, I talked about that earlier. It isn't always the case. And again, when you've got same-sex relationships, someone in the relationship will take on this role. But by and large, someone takes on the mental load, particularly if you've got children. Even not in a children, you know, when you haven't got children. I didn't have children for 12 years with my partner. Luckily, I've got a partner who we do try to divide the family, the home life well. Having said that, there are always going to be jobs that you end up doing as a woman. When you get children, that goes on steroids, you know. So remembering the £2 for the Harvest Festival and the 3 tins that they've got to take in, the kit for the football club, the dance class they've got to be here, and another child's got to be over on the other side of town within 15 minutes. All of that adds to that heightened feeling of too much, overwhelm. And so consequently, again, I think this is something that women really need to address within their relationships and, talk consciously to their partners and ask them, how can we create a family life that helps us all thrive? What a wonderful question to ask.
Yeah. But not all partners get that.
Absolutely. And again, this is where, when I do client work, it's really interesting how then we have to then look at how they're communicating it. Because again, there ends up being a lot of attack and blame in these scenarios, doesn't there?
Does, yeah.
You're not doing your bit. I mean, gosh, I can be a naggy. You know, I can do it, believe me. I'd just like to stress today, here and now, I'm not perfect. I've never said I'm perfect, and I don't always get it right. And I have wobbles, you know. Yeah,
you don't always follow the advice in your book, right?
Because I'm human. And so consequently, sometimes the emotion sweeps me. You know, we've just had 2 massive, this last year has been massive in my family. My dad paralysed himself last year. And then we've just had some more news that is just literally you know, very, very raw. And so consequently, these things come at us. They come from nowhere. You might be doing all the other things and then this comes at you. And it's how you manage that and how you respond is the most important way. And that's where resilience comes in.
Yeah.
When I talk about emotional resilience, that's it.
Do you teach your clients then that come in your group? Do you help them with the resilience side of it?
Yeah, it's the resilience. So again, that solution focused upward spiral. And I did a blog actually after my dad had come out of intensive care and we were sort of out of the danger zone in terms of him dying. But obviously we'd gone into my dad's paralysed and now is going to need to be rehabilitated. And I wrote a blog about that. And again, it looks at some of the practices and they're so simple, but we don't do them enough. So it was things like gratitude. You know, I literally sat in that hospital and looked at all the things I was grateful for. You know, the family room where you had people in floods of tears and the next minute, literally the most blackest, craziest humour you've ever experienced with people that you don't know, strangers who suddenly become best friends. We're all sharing food. You know, it was actually quite a life-affirming experience. Even though we're in the middle of a crisis.
So it's about recognizing these things as well.
Yes.
Recognizing the value of what's happening to you, because sometimes you just kind of cruise through life and when the bad things happen to you, the emotions do come out. Whereas when the good things are happening to you, you just kind of almost ignore them, don't you?
Exactly. And again, I mean, I know you do. There's lots of our fellow BizMums who propel this as a really, really important practice, you know, doing your daily glads, etc. And it's something I've done for a long, long time because I recognise the value in it. And again, it's something I encourage in my solution-focused sisterhood and with the clients that I work with, because it gives you perspective. On a day when it all feels like everything has just gone to pot and there's nothing good, it's not true. We lie to ourselves. So, you know, even on the day when we got some bad news recently, I came home and my little girl gave me the most beautiful cuddle in bed. She just sensed that something wasn't quite right. I hadn't told her at this point. And she just came over and gave me the biggest cuddle. Well, that, you know, life's not all bad, is it?
No.
I've just got the most amazing bit of love from a little girl who loves me. And
if you don't have children,
if you don't have children,
get a cat
again,
or a dog.
Well, no, I mean, when I didn't have children, you know, I didn't have children for the longest time. There were other things that I could find. Again, I was not looking for that. When I was in my burnout in my 20s, I didn't identify that as something to do at all. I had no clue. So there are so many things that we can be doing, which again, it's just having awareness. And this is where I love teaching this stuff, you know, with my clients, with my my membership club. And this is why I'm so excited to get this better program off the ground, because I know this signature program is going to bring together all my learnings from the past sort of 7 or 8 years. You know, I've been in business for 4, but I've been on a long personal development journey myself. And I want to bring all that together.
So, okay, what part of the book are you going to take us to now? What page are we on?
Okay, so we're on page 72, which is, again, sort of towards the end of the book. And
under success, so chapter 12.
And success is a big bugbear for me because, again, I think this is where we get ourselves into trouble. In the world, and in the Western world particularly, we are conditioned to believe that the only indicators of success are money, power, fame, and status. And whilst all of those 4 things are fantastic, they aren't the only indicators of success. And consequently, if you haven't defined success for yourself, guess what happens? You feel less than. You don't feel successful daily, and you feel like you're not actually, achieving things when you actually are. So one of the things I love doing with clients is a success definition, because
that's good.
If you don't define success for yourself, you're going to be living somebody else's definition of it. And when you're living in somebody else's decision making and and the way that you are projecting your life and the life path that you're taking, then obviously at some point or other you're going to be questioning, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Which actually is a really great question to ask. Is one I always start with my clients with.
But it's not even just that you're living someone else's definition. It's your own definition is murky. It's a combination of a whole bunch of things. It's partly yours. It's partly what you've learnt from growing up.
Absolutely.
It's partly
all
from
the
what you see on telly or what you see your friends' lives.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole bunch. So.
And that's a really good point as well, because what happens is we start that comparisonitis, which is another thing that, again, you know, inflicts a lot of the clients that I work with. They are comparing themselves to their peers and comparing it to their highlights, Sue. So if you were constantly looking at somebody else's highlights and not seeing, I mean, I did a blog on my Disney trip once, and all the pictures on my Facebook page would have given you this impression of absolute perfection, the Disney dream. And so in my blog, I told you how it was, the meltdowns in the queue with a daughter who was overheated, a daughter who doesn't like fireworks clinging to my leg when
Actually, I read that, but I remember that, yeah.
Because that's the truth, you know. But obviously, when I'm trying to put in my pictures on Facebook, I'm not going to, because it's not, you know, you don't do that. You don't write down all of the bad things. You just put the lovely pictures because that's what I wanted to remember of it.
Yeah, so, exactly. So you do have to take Facebook with a grain of salt.
Oh gosh,
and the stuff you see on there.
Absolutely. So
okay. So tell us then how can people work with you and get in touch with you and give us your definition here.
Okay. So I'll just read a little bit of my book of the chapter on success. What do you see when you think of this word? Is it money? For most people, it's lots of money. Having a work life that brings lots of money is seen as success in Western culture. What about status? If you're the CEO of a company or you've worked your way to the senior management team of an organisation, this too is seen as success. What about power? Being the head of state or a politician in a country is seen as a successful position to have. However, what if that money had come at the expense of children in poverty? Would that money seem so successful? What if the CEO was actually battling panic attacks every day under the strain of maintaining that successful position? Would that be seen as success? What if the power had been handed to that politician because of their parents standing in the local community, not on their own merit? Would that be seen as success? On the surface of it, success has been painted to be all these things in Western culture. But if you dig out to find the cost that some people have paid for that success, you might start to think that success isn't as easily defined as we've been led to believe. And so for me, doing success sessions, which is one of the one-off sort of taster sessions you can do with me, is really important because we can get to the bottom of what do you value? What's important to you? How will you feel successful on a daily basis? And I absolutely love they're a 90-minute session and they're one-off, but they really give you a compass to navigate where you want to go and how you want to do it. And the ladies who do this with me, so that it really is life-changing, I've had people change their whole business model. Do they
meet you?
Yeah, so I do one-to-one coaching. I do it over Zoom.
Okay.
And so it can be done, which is a sort of teleconferencing, video conferencing app that you can just download. And yeah, I work with people in Canada, Mallorca, America, all over the place, England, wherever.
Okay.
You know.
So you don't have to
physically come and
see me.
No.
You do physical?
I've stopped doing face-to-face ones, apart from when I'm doing workshops or bigger groups. But yeah, I tend to be doing them all on.
Okay, so how can people find you and where can they buy the book? It's on Amazon?
So the book is on Amazon. Can I just say, the only regret I have with this book, so is not coming to Team Author UK and get it properly edited by you. And if I do another one, I'll be coming straight to you. The book is on Amazon, so it's basically, I've self-published it on Amazon, so you can get it there. And if you want to work with me, again, all I say is, if you're sat there now and you feel like you've been through a burnout and you're ready to move forward, if you have, or if you're just sitting in an overwhelmed situation, you're a high-achieving woman who is juggling all this stuff, that mental load and the volume is just too much, and you can't see the wood for the trees, come and see me, have a clarity call. It's a free 30-minute call, and we can see whether I am a good fit for you and you're a good fit for me and whether we could work together. Okay. And you basically go to the contact page of woodforthetreescoaching.co.uk.
Okay, and Facebook?
Facebook is facebook.com/woodforthetreescoaching.
And do you use any other social media? Twitter,
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. So again, just under Michala Leyland, and on Instagram, I'm at WFTT Coaching, not WTF.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people
I know. That would, you have to stop.
I have to WFTT coaching. Although I do think that's genius. I should have used that.
Yeah, you should have. Okay, so we're going to close off the show with a really good song, I think, called Fight Song by Rachel Platten. And this is kind of a good power song for women. But I just wanted to thank you. It's gone so fast. I can't believe how much we've talked about. But you what you do, I know, because from what I see you do on Facebook and so on, you help so many people, Michala. So keep doing what you're doing. And as you say, your definition of success, your definition of where you want to be in life, it does change as you go through your life, as your life circumstance changes. So don't feel like, oh well, I had this idea and now 4 years later I'm stuck doing this thing because this is what I said I was going to do, but I'm totally unhappy. Well, like you said, you were a teacher, but you didn't have to teach in a secondary school setting. You could teach in a different way. So that's what those clarity calls would be good for, wouldn't it?
Definitely, just to see where you are, where you're up to, and what it is that you want. What's keeping you stuck, and what you want to do to move it forward. And I absolutely love doing them because, again, even just from those calls, people go away and start taking action.
Yeah, okay. We're seeing each other again tomorrow
We are.
at Sue France's Literary Luncheon in Knutsford. So I'm looking forward to that, where we bring a lot of authors and non-authors, maybe wannabe authors, but we come together and listen to some guest speakers. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll see you tomorrow. But also, if anybody wants to listen again, remember, just go to the Callan FM website and click on the show, the Indie Author Show. And you can listen again. It'll be live, well, not live, but available on there for 2 weeks. And then it'll be on my YouTube channel and your YouTube.
Yeah,
or
wonderful.
your website.
On my website.
On your website, yeah. So thanks very much. And I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another guest on the Indie Author Show.